Welcome to Act 3, the podcast where we explore how to thoughtfully shape the rest of our lives. I'm your host, Cara Gray. This podcast is sponsored by Good Morning Freedom, my retirement coaching service where I help executives and professionals plan their Act 3. For more information, stay tuned until the end. Hey there, listeners. Before we dive into today's episode, I've got some exciting news to share. We're all about celebrating life's big milestones here, and what's bigger than stepping into the golden years of your retirement? That's why I'm super excited to introduce our exclusive retirement swag collection. Picture this: stylish hoodies, sleek t-shirts, and classic baseball caps, each crafted to embody the spirit of retirement. It's not just about kicking back and relaxing. It's about embracing freedom, stepping into a new phase of being rewired, and thriving in your Act 3. Our collection celebrates these moments with designs that are minimal yet chic, modern yet timeless, perfect for you or as thoughtful gifts for your retired friends and family. And guess what? Shopping is just a click away. Visit goodmorningfreedom.myshopify.com to explore our range. Each piece tells a story, your story, of a life well lived and a future full of possibilities. Don't forget to check out the show notes for the link as well. But here's the catch. These are exclusive, limited time offerings, so make sure to grab your favorites before they're gone. Celebrate retirement in style with our retirement swag and let the world know that the best is yet to come. And now, on with the show. Today, I welcome Victor Poleshuck to the podcast. Victor is a clinical professor emeritus of obstetrics and gynecology at the University of Rochester School of Medicine and former chair of the Ethics Committee and chair of the Ethics Consultation Service at Rochester General Hospital. Victor retired in 2006 and has been very active in his local Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, teaching and taking courses. He travels extensively, interviews applicants for the medical school, and is a member of the board of directors of the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra. He is also on the education committee of the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra, chair of adult education at his synagogue, and involved in the lives of his 5 grandchildren. Welcome, Victor, to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. So I always start my interviews with talking about what life looked like when you were working in the bulk of your career. You've had an accomplished career as a physician and faculty member. Tell us about that time in your life.
It was a busy time. I had a practice of obstetrics and gynecology, started a private practice with one other physician. And when I retired, we had a practice of 11 physicians with 3 locations. It was very rewarding. The practice of obstetrics and gynecology was very rewarding too. Very long-term relationships with patients, which I really enjoyed. A lot of wonderful kinds of surgery that, as my career progressed, the things we were able to do with advanced instrumentation was absolutely wonderful, and a lot of great learning during my career. And being on faculty at the medical school was very rewarding also. Teaching is really a lot of fun. And I had intimate educational relationships with both medical students and residents. So it was a busy and active and very rewarding life.
What percentage of your time was spent practicing medicine versus teaching? Just out of curiosity.
It's a hard call to put numbers on it like that because so much of the teaching was done while practicing at the bedside or in the operating room, labor and delivery suite, and so on. So the vast majority of my in-hospital time, I would have a medical student or resident with me. So a lot.
Yeah. Yes. So you have stayed very active in your retirement from all reports that I've come across. What has motivated you to really choose to be involved in so many different organizations like the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute and also the Rochester Philharmonic? I think those are great organizations to be involved in. Anything else that I'm missing? Certainly your synagogue and all that.
I don't know. I've always been somewhat of a geek. And I've always regretted a lot of the education I was not able to get as an undergrad in medical school, going to medical school, because when you're a pre-med as an undergrad, you have so many required courses that your ability to take electives is limited. Um, so Osher is a really wonderful institute. It's a college. It's like going to college without exams and papers. Um, and the Lifelong Learning Institute is full of people who are just like me. They have retired. They still have brains that work and want to exercise them and use them. And so I both teach there and take classes there, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So, as you were approaching your retirement, did you have a plan for what you were going to do with your time, or how did that evolve? How did you plan your life?
Not a concrete plan, and I retired in somewhat of a gradual manner. I retired from my practice fully, and then went back and worked part-time doing ambulatory gynecology for a couple of years, seeing patients I'd seen for many years. So I would go back for a couple of half days a week or 3 half days a week, which was a very nice transition into retirement. It was a nice way to do that. And my patients enjoyed it very much too, because I got to see them in a very casual way and introduce them to my partners who they would transition to over time. So it was not an abrupt transition. It was a gradual transition. And I had known about the educational opportunities at what had been called at that time the Athenaeum here in Rochester, and was excited to explore educational opportunities. Indeed, the first course I took after I retired was on the University of Rochester campus. I took a course in constitutional law, which had always interested me, and now it just spread all over the place in terms of what I'm studying. And I'd always been involved at my synagogue. I had been vice president of finance and so on, and so I continued my involvement there. And my involvement at the medical school transitioned into being on the admissions committee, which I was on for many years. And I'm still active in the admissions process by interviewing applicants. And that's a wonderful thing to do. I just had an interview yesterday with a really wonderful young woman. I get to meet all these fabulous young people who are applying to the medical school and interview them. So it was a nice transition.
Yeah, you've done a really nice job of finding a balance between intellectual stimulation and community engagement and leisure time. What does a typical week look like for you now?
It
Is there a
depends.
typical week?
Yeah, there is. So typical week, I'm teaching at the moment. I'm teaching at the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute in 2 courses. One is, well, I should back up and say that classical music has been a lifelong interest of mine. And I have read a lot and I know a fair amount about it, so I've been able to teach it. So I taught a 4-semester course in the history of Western music at Osher. And I've been teaching composer-specific courses. I'm in the middle of a Gershwin course right now.
Fun.
And so that's fun. And I'm taking a course at the moment in Candide. And so and I'm also teaching that course, Leonard Bernstein's operetta from Voltaire's Candide. So that's fun. And I'm taking other classes there. So I'd probably spend 3 half days a week at the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute,
Okay.
either taking classes or teaching. And then I'll usually have a couple of interviews for the medical school. So that'll take a couple of hours of interviewing, and then another half hour, 45 minutes to write up those interviews for each. And this week we're having some intense meetings at my synagogue over future planning. I'm on a committee for that. So it's busy and I love it. I love being busy. And that's when
Yeah.
I'm traveling. I travel extensively and I really enjoy travel.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm going next. So nice segue. I know you've just gotten back from a trip to all the stands, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan. I don't know where else you went. Tell us
Uh,
about that most recent trip, Victor.
I started in Southeast Kazakhstan in Almaty and followed the Silk Route west through Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, and Tajikistan, and wound up in Istanbul. It was a fascinating trip. It was a real hole in my education and knowledge. I don't know about you, but my education was so Eurocentric. There's this whole center of Asia that has wonderful history, amazing cultures, and I knew very little about it. So studying in preparation for the trip and then taking a 3-week trip like that was quite wonderful.
So I know you have a process about choosing and preparing for these trips. Walk us through that a little bit. What does that look like? Because that seems like great fun as well and a fantastic use of your time.
It is. It depends on previous trips. So um, I really enjoy city trips and the cultural things that you can do, museums, uh, galleries, concerts, theater, that kind of thing. So I'll do city trips, but I'll sort of alternate maybe a city trip and then an adventurous trip. Right now, I lost my wife after one of our adventure trips last fall. We had been to uh, Indonesia, New Guinea, Papua New Guinea, and had a really phenomenal time. We visited the Azmat people, the ones who killed and probably ate Michael Rockefeller, if you remember that story from way back when. And shortly after that, she fell and hit her head and died. So we had
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry to hear that.
trip there. Yeah. Um, she was 80. We just had her 80th birthday party. And then that happened. But that was a real adventure. And then I decided I'd do another adventure, which I just did. I'm leaving in 10 days for another trip. I'm going down the west coast of Southern California and Mexico on a small boat for snorkeling and whale watching. And there are a lot of parts there. And then I have a trip coming up. My granddaughter has asked me to take her to Mongolia as a college graduation trip next July. So we'll be doing that. And then I've just signed up for a trip to Rwanda and Uganda on a gorilla trek for the end of August next summer. So
Wow.
that'll be
Are you
something.
taking these trips with a group or through a travel agent, or do you sort it out yourself?
The adventurous ones I do in pre-planned group trips. You can't
Okay.
do that kind of thing by yourself.
Yeah.
But the city
I was
trip,
hoping you're not wandering around by yourself, Victor.
no. But the city trips I generally do by myself, and I'll
Yeah.
often rent a car and drive through places in Europe and so on. So um, I've often driven to the south of France, driven around Italy, and so on. I've not done that kind of a trip since my wife died. I don't know how that will feel.
Yeah, I imagine that's changed up your planning quite a bit.
Yeah.
What has been your favorite destination, like since you've retired, or someplace that you want to go back to?
Well, the place I've gone back to the most is Jerusalem. I have probably been there 10 times or more. And 3 or 4 years ago, we rented an apartment in Jerusalem and lived there for a month. It's a magical city.
Wow.
I did an Airbnb apartment for a month. And so for city travel, that is the place I would go back to over and over and over again. There's always something wonderfully new in it. It's a very spiritual place, a very amazing place to go. As a matter of fact, with the current conflict that's going on, I'm planning a trip either in January or February. That's not settled yet.
Wow.
on a mission to just show support.
Wow. That is some adventure travel, Victor. I mean, that's going into a war
Okay.
zone.
Well, no, most of Israel is not a war zone.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, you have to duck and hide when the sirens go off, but
Yeah.
Israel is functioning.
Wow.
Schools are opening this week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But that, and then if you had to ask me what is my favorite adventure travel,
Yeah.
I would say Antarctica was
Wow.
astonishing. Hiking on the Antarctic continent with all the penguins, and it was really an amazing trip. I went with National Geographic.
Mm.
And, they do I've traveled with them a number of times. They do a fabulous job.
Good. Perfect. I also am a huge fan of classical music. In fact, that's what I studied in my undergrad years. Tell me about your work with the Rochester Philharmonic, your work on the board, and what types of initiatives you guys are working on to expose new audiences to classical music. I'm always interested in that.
That's something we're so proud of, is what we do. We have concerts almost on a weekly basis for school kids, and
Mm.
we really wonderful relationships with multiple school districts, both the city school district and the peripheral school districts. And we have busloads of kids coming in for school concerts, as well as outreach. We send small music groups out to schools. We have a petting zoo of instruments that we bring to the kids and so on. Education is a really important part of the mission of the orchestra.
Yes.
And I'm on the education committee, which so I help to plan those kinds of things. And it's wonderful. We have an orchestra in Rochester, which as our conductor likes to say, plays way above its pay grade. It is. I think it's partly because the Eastern School of Music is here,
Yes.
which is a world-class music school. But the orchestra is fabulous. And I've been a season subscriber to the orchestra since I've been in Rochester, since really the late 60s. And
Yeah.
been interested and was elected to the board 3 years ago. Yeah.
Nice. I spent a very formative year in high school at a summer chamber music program at the Eastman School. So I have very fond memories of Rochester and the whole scene going on there for sure. You mentioned being involved in your grandchildren's lives. Tell us about your grandchildren. Are they living close to you?
They are, well, the 3 of the 5 are off at school now, but I've been fortunate that, yes, they grew up within a bike ride. And so the relationship you have with your grandchildren when you're that close is really wonderful. It's very casual and ordinary. Every few days, something can come up, and I get a call from one of my daughters saying, can you come on over and sit for the kids or something like that for a little while, or pick one up here or take one there. So it's that kind of a relationship. It's really been quite wonderful. And 3 of them, like I mentioned, are off at school.
Yeah.
One is in it's graduating college, is law school at Georgetown. Another one is going to be graduating this year. Another one is a sophomore. And we have 2, and the last 2 are both seniors in high school this year, so they'll be going off next year. So, but it's been wonderful to be nearby. Our whole family is nearby, and that was very lucky.
Yeah, that's fantastic that you're able to be around and involved so much, for sure. What has been the most surprising part about entering and experiencing a slower life, and not even slower life, life in retirement after such a long career? What's been the most surprising and what's been the most rewarding?
The rewarding is easier to answer than the surprising. The rewarding has been the ability to engage my interests. I have too many interests, and
No such thing.
so I've been able to engage those as with the time in retirement.
Yeah.
And so that's been a whole lot of fun. I have a Friday lunch group of they're all physicists and me, and they enjoy having a doctor in the group. And I have always had an interest in physics, and so each week we have a topic for discussion, and we'll discuss all kinds of things in the physical world. So
Mm,
that's been fun. Um, so that's the most rewarding. It's just been able to do a lot of things that I never had time to do otherwise.
yeah.
Surprise! I don't think anything has been very surprising. I guess the surprise has been the ability to do the things that I've wanted to do. That fortunately I'm 82 years old and I'm healthy and I've been able
Yeah.
to indulge. So maybe that's the surprise, is that I've been healthy this long since retirement.
Yeah. That's the key for sure. For a lot of people, they can have saved money, but if they don't have health, it doesn't work out so well. Lastly, I want to ask you what advice you give for professionals approaching retirement and finding purpose in their third act.
It's interesting. I've been taken to lunch a few times by people I know who are close to retiring and had asked me how to plan, what to do. And I think the thing is to look inward and to figure out who you are and what will interest you as time goes on. I have one friend who is a retired physician, and he sits in front of the television all day because he's never been able to figure out anything that interests him to do.
Hmm.
And I find it so sad. I go to lunch with him and try and involve him in things, but he's just not interested. I suspect he's depressed. But
Yeah.
you need to look and figure out what it is that's going to please you, and then figure out ways of accomplishing those pleasures. Because without that, you're just going to sit around and wilt.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, Victor, this has been a really great chat. It's so nice to meet you. And thank
that's
you so much for your time.
my pleasure. Thank you so much for asking.
This podcast is sponsored by Good Morning Freedom, my retirement coaching firm. I help executives and professionals plan the non-financial part of their retirement, like how to discover new purpose and how you want to spend your time. I offer a one-on-one coaching retirement blueprint package where we work together to discover some new avenues of exploration for your Act 3. This coaching is completely custom and will provide you with a ton of resources and support as you transition to this new stage of life. For all the details, please go to goodmorningfreedom.com/services.